Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5. This is Football Saturday all the way until 5. Remember, Football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're streaming the conversation as well. Listen on News Talk, watch us on the Off the Ball digital and social channels. For Periscope and Twitter, at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Join in studio by the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly and Irish Independent soccer correspondent Dan McDonnell, who's in Glasgow ahead of tonight's Nations League games. The match itself between the Republic of Ireland and Scotland. So just let you know, folks, what's happening around the houses. Ukraine 1, Armenia 0 is a score in the first game this afternoon. So Ukraine, it's not really good for Ireland's prospects. And also, just let you know, Shelburne 1, Bohemians 0 in the Evoke.ie Women's FAI Cup semi-final, with Noelle Murray scoring from the penalty spot for Shell. So a good start to the game for them. Johnny, how's the form?
How are you, JD? What's going on?
And Dan and David, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, very good, lads. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you as well. The under-21s last night, Johnny, I think we'll start there. My thoughts are, I suppose, whatever but the result and going to Israel on Tuesday, where I don't think we can have any fear, is that we try to play football. We did play football, and that was probably the most positive thing. It wasn't hoofball. It wasn't always pretty accurate or 100%, but I felt that it was definitely something positive to feel that there's a technical, assurance about us that I don't know if we would have had an under-21 team 20 years ago. Would you agree or disagree?
Totally. Well, the under-21 system was a bit of a joke. I mean, it seemed to be a lot of the parameters seemed to entail trying to kind of snare lads so that they'd play for the senior team, and there didn't seem to be an awful lot of thought put into it, and such that we've never actually qualified for this tournament. So it's a big deal to get there. And Jim Crawford, I suppose, was a fairly obvious successor to Stephen Kenny, who I think brought a lot of life to the role. And Stephen Kenny probably happened upon a very good bunch of players at that time, and they went to the Toulon tournament as a very young team, and I think that stood to them. And at that time you had Aaron Connolly and Ida and like Troy Parrott. Obafemi wasn't even necessarily getting a look in at that time. They had very good players, and that's carried forward to this. As you say, JD, they play nice football. Brian Maher, I think, epitomises that. I thought some of his stuff on the ball last night from goalkeeper, which has been shown at Derry City, was really excellent. He will not be happy with. I don't think he'll be happy with the goal he conceded for Derry against Rovers on Sunday, but he definitely won't be happy with the goal last night. One of these unfortunate things, but he got it all wrong from across. Israel didn't do much in the game. Obviously, they'd finished second in their group. They're a good side, and they've gotten some very good results away from home. There's some nice technical players, but at the same time, Ireland should have won the game. It was a strange one, because when you're thinking of the differences in terms of career trajectory of Aaron Connolly and Ferguson playing up top together. Ferguson, apparently with the world at his feet, what is he, 18 I think? 17 even. He hasn't even 18 yet. Aaron Connolly, who hasn't played for years for the 21s, haven't been with the senior team, drafted in as a reflection of his rather less successful trajectory in recent years. And it was hard to know how it was going to work out, but he worked very hard. I think he was probably unfortunate not to get a penalty in the second half. I think he got man of the match in the end. Ferguson actually did not have a great game at all. He gave the ball away a lot under minimal enough pressure in the first half, but his strength, just like basically the power he put into that header for the goal, barges his own centre back out of the way. For me, I'd be interested to see what the lads' view on this is if they watch the game, but I actually think, for me, the player to take out of it could be Smallbone. He's so impressive on the ball whenever I see him, and obviously he has plenty of experience at a good level. And they go to, as you say, they go to Israel 1-1. They should have no fear. It won't be straightforward. But looking at the game last night, they probably should win. They're a very good side, and it was good to see the good crowd in Tala as well, and lots of positives from the game. I thought Joe Redmond at the back was very good.
Yeah,
Smallbone for me was probably the pick of them.
Dan, I thought Aaron Connolly's attitude was great. Did you agree?
Yeah, and that's what you're always looking at, JD. Unfortunately, with Aaron Connolly, I think he's a product of his own sort of history in recent times. I know David's on the line there, and he's spoken about he spoke about watching him as a sub at Brighton before, and I think there would have been a lot of analysis of his body language and his demeanour. And to be fair, Aaron Connolly spoke about himself quite recently and very openly. But I still think people who probably followed his career for a period of time are still very much like, that sounds great, you're saying all the right things, but they probably need to see it. And I saw most of the match last night. I'm obviously over in Glasgow, but I was still able to see probably the sort of 90% of the game. And it certainly struck early on, probably by some of his movement was quite good. And it's a reminder that, like for all the Aaron Connolly's, the travails that he's had, he has considerable experience at a good level, and dropping someone like that into the under-21 side, you can see that he's more advanced in some departments, obviously, than some of the other players. And the encouraging thing, as alluded to probably in the commentary last night and generally, is that late on he was still trying, making runs, just a bit unlucky not to score. So you hope this is the platform for something. I still think you need to see it over a longer period of time. He's got a bit to prove. But it does appear from what he said that he's gained some kind of perspective from maybe the downhill slide that he endured, and hopefully now that this can be the start of something. And it's a sort of a mad one. He's born in I think the year 2000, Aaron Connolly, and just the way that things have worked out with the eligibility windows for this tournament. I think he might even be 23 by the time the finals come around, but he's still eligible to play. And it's very rare that players come back to the 21s once they go and play senior for Ireland, and it's an unusual thing, but other countries do avail of that. And I think for someone who clearly wasn't going to be in the senior plans in the short term, it shouldn't be above anyone to do that. But I suppose sometimes the done thing is that when you go to the senior team, you don't come back. It's good that he has done that. I did wonder would he'd start. I must admit, I kind of wondered, as part of the deal, would it be that they'd sort of phase him in, maybe throw him off the bench in the first game and play him in the second. But clearly they went straight for it. But I like Johnny's confidence about the second leg, but I would suspect Israel might be a different proposition at home too.
Yeah, and just on Connolly as well, JD, like this is still miles off the level required, to be playing the senior team. And his club career in Italy, see how that goes this season. But the positive last night was his attitude as much as anything else.
Yeah. Can you, David Connolly, can you recapture it? If you have a dip in your career as a striker, is it easy to recapture, or are you in a slippery slope?
No, I think you can. I think you can recapture it. I mean, I agree. It's. I look to other countries that do this, as has been said, and the most famous one is, I discussed this last night, is in Spain, where Juan Mata and Javi Martinez dropped down from the senior squad. They'd already won the World Cup and then went and played for the 21s with Spain, and and won the 21 Euros. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking a backward step. And I think in England, there's maybe a bit of arrogance to think that players are too good to go and do that. But that's why the Spanish and all these other sides end up winning everything, because they don't maybe have the same ego. And I think maybe Aaron is trying to say, look, I don't have an ego. I have seen him on the side, unused, very frustrated, and look like he feels he should be playing. There's one way to go and prove that, and that's by going and starting games. My only hesitation for that is I have played abroad, and if you go abroad, I don't know if he's on his own. I would assume he is, right? If he has someone with him, I don't know. Who's doing the cooking? What's he eating? How's he living? You could get lost. It's not a bad place to go and get lost in, right? Venice, I've got to be honest. I mean, probably you'd have a whale of a time. But in terms of his football, I just wonder how that will go, because sometimes you just might need a little bit of help and people around you and who know you. I guess you could easily just get lost there. For example, if he's at Brighton, if he's at Middlesbrough, Chrissy Wilder would know exactly what Aaron is up to every minute of the day if he's not at a training ground. I don't know if that's the case. I'm not saying he needs to be monitored like that, but sometimes I just wonder whether that loan will prove to be the right one. I'm not so sure. Just because it didn't work out at Middlesbrough doesn't mean it couldn't work out at another championship club. We'll have to wait and see how this loan goes. But I have reservations that it would be the right one, personally. And I think he could have. Nothing wrong. Look at Troy dropping down to League One. Could he have maybe gone if you couldn't get a Championship club, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting the league, going into League One, for example, if you have to. Because, I went and played in League One. This is not about me, but I played in a League One team that half the team ended up in the Premier League winning titles, or, playing at Liverpool, and, they were playing in League One at the time. Who
was that, David?
At Southampton,
Who were the players at Liverpool?
Oh, so we had Lallana, we had Morgan Schneidlin at Man U, we had, Ricky Lambert. I mean, we could go on. We had a lot of players that didn't have an ego. Now, okay, they might have started in League One, but nonetheless, it wasn't an issue to go and play at that level and prove that level to then go on again, And I'm not saying Aaron has that issue, but I would have just rather him maybe stick a little bit closer to home, because you get, I'm sure for Stephen as well, if you're banging the goals in League One, like we saw with Troy Parrott, or playing well, maybe not even scoring, but playing well and working hard and being part of a good team, you get recognition. It might be a little bit less forthcoming, obviously, in Serie B.
The one thing I just come in on that, though, is that in that interview Aaron Connolly did a month ago, it did sound like he needed to get out of England. And the one thing he did allude to, and I think there's obviously been some headlines around elements of, I don't know, his social circle or his lifestyle, and he alluded to that himself. He did say he needed to get to Italy for a fresh start because there was bad influence in his life where he was. That was, I mean, I don't know, that's left open to interpretation. I suppose people can Google and read up on some of the stories that appeared if they want. But I think Aaron Connolly's attitude to it was that he'd actually gone to Italy, had his best pre-season in years, because all of a sudden, whatever people were hanging around them, they weren't there anymore, and it was being spoken of a little bit like a retreat or something, where he needed to maybe get that change of scenery. And I would generally agree with David's theory there about the risk of and you've lived it, and can speak with more authority about it than anyone. But I got the impression from listening to people and from what Aaron said himself that being closer to home and where he was based in the UK maybe wasn't the best thing for him at this point in time. That seemed to be an opinion that existed.
Okay, just on Evan Ferguson, I don't know if you've seen much of him, David, but 17 years of age, and he looks he looked mid-20s, to be honest, the physique. But, have you seen players like that who develop at such a young age, and how they then progress?
Yeah, obviously, and the challenge for Evan will be like all these players. You equate, say, the Ireland 21s to being, say, under 21 football in England, right? Because they put a lot of the under 21 teams, Premier League teams, into, say, the EFL trophy, and those 21 teams have not done well against league opposition, which it kind of brings you back to if there's good lads in the under 21s, they'll inevitably end up in the senior squad. Now, for Evan, at some point, 17, 18, he needs to then go and play as great as under 21 football is, as proved in the trophy. It's not a great yardstick in terms of progressing. I think he needs to get out and then go out and be on loan and go and play and get league football, league minutes under his belt, and get that first loan out the way, pretty early, 17, 18, 19, get your first loan out the way so that you're not a risk to someone maybe when you get your second or third loan, because a lot of these Premier League clubs, there's a couple at Man City, talented boys. One of them, Tommy Doyle, was on his second loan, and he looks the real deal for Sheffield United. And maybe there's another one, McAtee maybe doesn't quite because he's on his first loan. But I think Evan's done brilliantly, and pretty soon he wants to be kicking on physically because he looks like he's capable of league football, and just go and getting that loan in.
Okay, we've got to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about the senior team in the next few moments with Dan McDonnell, David Connolly and Johnny Ward. Now, let's take an update from the golf, the Dromoland Castle, the KPMG Women's Irish Open, and our reporter, Aisling O'Reilly.
The sun has come out here at Dromoland Castle, and what a great day 3 it's been so far. What an improvement from yesterday for Cavan's Leona Maguire when she finished the day 10 shots off the lead in 42nd position. She is just off the course here today after birdieing the 18th with such an impressive putt, to the delight of the thousands of people here supporting her. A solid performance throughout, making 6 birdies and 1 eagle. She is now currently sitting in joint 5th position, 9 under par in total, with a score of 65 today, just 4 shots off the lead. It's still Sweden's Moa Folk is in the lead, 13 under par. She's currently stepping up to the 10th hole, and she is closely followed by Anne van Dam of the Netherlands, 1 shot behind. With plenty more action to come here at the KPMG Women's Irish Open.
And golf and off the ball in association with the KPMG Women's Irish Open. We're back after the break with a look ahead to Scotland and Ireland. And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5. This is Football Saturday. Remember, football and off the ball brought to you by Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, AFL, Scottish Premiership and much more live on Sky Sports. You can text us 53106. Tweet us at Off the Ball. Listen on News Talk across the country. Also watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Delighted to be joined in studio by Johnny Ward and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly and the Irish independent soccer correspondent Dan McDonnell, who's in Glasgow ahead of Republic of Ireland Scotland in the Nations League tonight. Just going to update you folks on some sports scores. Armenia now 2-0 up. 2-0 down rather. Armenia 0, Ukraine 2. So Ukraine leading by 2-0 in League B. So Ukraine, that's not a good result for Ireland. It is Shelburne 1, Bohemians 0 in the Women's FAI Cup semi-final. Noel Murray from the penalty spot. Ulster have beaten the Scarlets 55-39. That is in the United Rugby Championship this afternoon. At the moment in South Africa, it's the Stormers 31, Connacht 15. In the golf, Leona Maguire is tied for 6th on 9 under par, 3 shots behind the leader, Moa Falk, on day 3 of the Women's Irish Open. That's what's going on around the houses. And also racing news, we had an Aidan O'Brien winner of the Middle Park Stakes, the Group 1 at Newmarket this afternoon with the Blackbeard 100-30. Ryan Moore riding, and the Cheveley Park Stakes, the Group 1 won by Lazoo at a price of 11-2. So Dan, what's the mood music been like from Stephen Kenny and the players this week? Obviously, it was a great result in the summer, but Scotland were also good the other night.
Yeah, like it's been reasonably positive, JD. I mean, it's that part of the international window where you haven't played a game yet, so it's generally reasonably upbeat. I mean, Stephen Kenny was speaking yesterday about the fact it's been a reasonably uninterrupted week. He's been able to do sort of 11v11 training ground stuff, which is something he's always liked to do. I suppose a lot of managers do, some more than others maybe. And I think one thing he probably struggled with initially at probably senior international management as somebody who's sort of treble or even quadruple game windows where there wasn't maybe a huge amount of time to do stuff. This is the opposite. I mean, it's been a perfect sort of lead up really. So the main music is reasonably positive. I found it sort of a strangely low-key week in some ways, just in the sense that you're trying to ascertain the importance of these games. And I mean, this is important. There's absolutely no doubt. You mentioned that Ukraine result there, which seems quite likely. That sort of means Ireland need to win tonight to finish in the top 2 of their group. But it's obviously not as finely poised as maybe the mood you would have around, say, a regular qualifier or something like that. But so the one thing that's striking, really, that I found is how much the Scots are motivated to play Ireland, and being over here. I sort of made this point in the piece today. Often, like, you might be covering an Ireland game and the opposition are talking about themselves and not necessarily that bothered about the opposition, whereas every single Scottish player, management member, is determined to avenge what happened in the summer, and it feels like it's a really big game for them. Whereas Ireland are just like serenely enough moving on, sort of waiting in the long grass maybe to sort of explode tonight. We'll see, but it's a slightly unusual build-up. Yeah, it's a big game, but I don't know. I'm not sure how everyone else is feeling about it. It's sort of the actual importance of it is it could be argued that Tuesday becomes more important in a weird way depending on how things go.
How do we feel, Dan, about the argument about players who are playing well and in form and players who are not playing at the moment? So like Shane Duffy, Seamus Coleman have not been playing, whereas Chizolia Ogbene, who didn't play against Scotland in June, has scored 5 goals for Rotherham this season.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's certainly been a discussion point throughout the week. I mean, that it works so well against Scotland in the summer. Do you just like pick the same players because he has all the outfield players available from that game? Kelleher isn't here, and you know, Bazzuno was arguably his number one anyway. But yeah, like, I mean, the vibe probably seems to be that maybe Shane Duffy and Seamus Coleman won't play. That sort of that match sharpness will cost them. I certainly don't expect Coleman to start. I think it was probably a choice between Duffy and Dara O'Shea for the third spot in central defence. And while, you know, Stephen Kenny is asked directly about Shane Duffy yesterday, he's always going to say nice things. But I suppose the vibe you're getting would suggest that maybe it's going to be Dara O'Shea and at the back three. I mean, John Egan's not young; he's actually 30, but he's the same age as Shane Duffy. Sometimes people are almost talking about he has been around as long or something, that it's going to be the Egan, Collins, Dara O'Shea setup, and that's the way that they're going to go into this game, rather than just trying to like replicate what happened in June when Shane Duffy didn't play and was influential in set pieces. Obviously, had 1 or 2 tough moments on the ball in the first half, but that is obviously the implications for how you set up who plays in the middle of the three, for example. Is this Nathan Collins, you know, the defence being built around Nathan Collins, or will John Egan be centre and Nathan Collins is on the right, perhaps? We'll see. But I think there's certainly an argument. I think Stephen Kenny in June for that game in Armenia was probably burned a small bit. And actually David, who's there, I remember spoke at the time, was advocating putting Obafemi in because he was in great form, albeit there'd been a little bit of a break from the end of his season. and Stephen Kenny stuck with Robinson and Ogbene at that point, who'd been excellent for him in the previous window, but maybe just weren't in terrific form then. And I kind of wonder, does the opposite now apply, and that Obafemi loses his place because of his uncertain time at Swansea, whereas, as you mentioned, Ogbene is flying. I just have a niggling feeling he might play Ogbene tonight instead of Obafemi, but could be wrong on that one.
David, should it be 3-5-2? Is it best for us to have 3 in the middle, especially with the way like McGregor and McTominay played the other night? Scotland will bring energy. There'll be great atmosphere there this evening. Do we need to pack the midfield, have Malumbi in there, play that formation we played against Scotland, or would you?
Yeah, I would. That's what I would do. I mean, I think he's got a couple of decisions to make, but
what are they?
Some of them. Well, I think obviously he's got a wing-back area, probably. You know, does he play? He probably will play Matt Doherty, I imagine. Although maybe, you know, he would have liked him to probably play a bit more football. I agree he has a bit of a dilemma because Duffy, if Dykes does start, for example, a couple of games in a short period of time. I mean, Lyndon Dykes he's got a better goal record for Scotland than almost any other Scottish striker you can name, you know, the ones that spring to mind. And although he hasn't got goals maybe that you'd expect at club level, you know, for Scotland, he's a real threat. And obviously he's outstanding in the air, you know, so defensively we might need a Duffy, for example, with his height. I'd imagine Egan would be the central one. I've seen Sheffield United live twice and they've been absolutely outstanding. And the front part of the pitch is an issue because I think as was just said, you know, by Dan, you know, I might have been banging the drum for Obafemi earlier in the season, but I've been down to Swansea. I saw them against Hull. He got a couple of minutes. And I think you cannot be playing Michael, I don't think, when he hasn't had this much game time. He's had an awful lot going on around him at club level. You know, his manager's had a lot to say about him. And I just think it would be too much of a gamble to be starting him in this game. I agree, Ogbene's in terrific form, but, you know, I think playing Michael now would be a bit of a risk, I think. And I think it would be better coming off the bench if he's going to be used. But 100%, we're going to have dogs of war that in the middle of the park are going to be able to match up with the Scottish midfield because, that is arguably their strongest part of the pitch. Look, I think if Michael was playing, he'd cause the 2 centre-halves even now. But I think he can cause their 2 centre-halves a lot of problem off the bench. He can still have an impact and do that in the last half hour. if needs be. And you've got to remember, Scotland have basically played a back three for, as far as we can recall, until the other night when he changed to a 4. So, and that might have been our performance against them which forced that change. As it is, Hendry and McKenna are kind of haven't had that many games together in as two centre halves. So, but even if Obafemi doesn't start, there's still plenty of time to come off the bench and and have an impact and do that.
Johnny, what do you think?
It's been a strange group, JD. Ireland's performances have been so many varieties of performance, from Armenia to the terrible start.
It's like a quality street at Christmas, Johnny.
What chocolate are you gonna get next, JD? You look at Ukraine though. Ukraine were so poor against Scotland the other night, and they've had a lot. Let's.
They're 3-0 up now, by the way. 3-0 up against Armenia.
Let's exonerate. I think I'd forgive Ireland. The Ukraine defeat. I think Ukraine were very good that day. The Armenia one is probably the one that'll hold us back. But Scotland were terrible in Lansdowne Road. So it's
but they were in a hangover of being knocked out of the World Cup.
They were in a hangover, and I think
now they're bidding for promotion. Like, they're going to be playing good teams. They're in League A. They've got a rejuvenation about them, I suppose.
I think, as Dan alludes to, there's definitely a bit of revenge on their minds tonight. I think there'll be a lot of boozed up Scots and Irish in the ground. It's going to be a great atmosphere. I think it's a late kick-off Saturday. There's a friendly rivalry between the pair. Scotland are going to be well up for this. They're on the back of the Ukraine game. In terms of Kenny's choice selections, I definitely think Egan will start. Doherty will start. I guess McLean will start on the left, but I'd like to see Robbie Brady play Tuesday if he doesn't. I haven't seen Brady for Preston this year, but by all accounts he's playing very well. I think McLean is still very, very limited, for all that he's a brilliant athlete and great endeavour. I think Robbie Brady's a better footballer, and McLean has vulnerabilities defensively as well, so I'm not sure Robbie Brady is any worse than him in that regard. I'd be inclined to pick Parrott and Obafemi up front together, because it works so well against Scotland. Now, neither of them are scoring goals this season. Parrott has been apparently playing well. Preston have actually banned players from scoring by the looks of it, and conceding. Their games just end up 0-0 or 1-0. The Obafemi situation, there's always been a little bit of an asterisk about him in terms of he's a bit of a character. Seems very bubbly around the camp, but there were little doubts before about him not coming into certain squads, and now obviously the Russell Martin situation. Last week he did play. I thought it was interesting that Kenny seemed to go out of his way to defend him and say there are 2 or 3 sides to a story, which I thought was he didn't need to say that. So he was defending Obafemi. The Obafemi Parrott axis in the Scotland game was one of the most exciting things I've seen from an Irish football team in some time, albeit against an abject Scotland team. But midfield as well, I don't know what Dan thinks, but I really don't know who's going to play alongside Cullen. That for me is I'd say it'll probably be a 3-5-2. I don't know who he's going to put in there.
Malumbi and Knight, is it, Dan?
Yeah,
Malumbi and Knight.
I at the start of the week, I probably thought I was starting to think you might put Hendrick in, because he's pretty much always picked Hendrick when he's been fit, and Hendrick is now playing more football now than he has been probably at any time in the last 12 to 18 months. But I don't know. I think the flip side of that is, again, completely could be wrong. I think that sort of Malumbi, Knight, Cullen thing worked so well against Scotland. Energy was so good. Malumbi really brought something to those last 2 games. And I know he only dropped Hendrick at that time because I think he just realised the lack of games that caught up with him. But I just wonder, this is probably a game where off the ball work is going to be important. I think maybe against Armenia on Tuesday it might be a little bit more about on the ball stuff, and you could maybe see Malumbi's off the ball strengths, see him play here tonight, and maybe see Hendrick swap in and play on Tuesday. That's what I would think. There's actually a weird one about this thing tonight with that Ukraine result as well. That for Scotland, we're talking about Irish changes and probably trying to second guess what Scotland are going to do. From Scotland's perspective, there's actually no difference between a win and a draw tonight, right, in terms of their standing in the group. They just need to avoid defeat. Once they avoid defeat tonight, a draw in their last game against Ukraine is enough to top the group. So I think the Scots here are waiting to see what. I mean, they're obviously very conscious of 3 games in a week. I mean, Ukraine made 11 changes today for that match. They obviously the coach decided to really roll the dice after midweek. But that's a big game for them on Tuesday. Even with Kieran Tierney, they were able to take him off the other night. Will they play him 3 times in a week? That's what they're talking about here. They might rotate in some forward areas as well too. They're obviously very conscious. This can be the nature of this derby game tonight can be very demanding, but they probably don't want to leave Tuesday behind here too. So that's just another little factor to throw into the mix for this game. I mean, I know every footballer wants to win every game they play, but so Scotland have played the Nations League pretty clever before. They've used it to their advantage, and they know the prize of topping the group. So they won't want to leave Tuesday behind them here, which is just another little element to consider. If Ukraine had dropped points today, it might have been a slightly different story, but that's just a weird one about it now. That for Scotland in the bigger picture, it's just about not losing.
Have you seen many Irish up in Glasgow, Dan, boozed up or not?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't want to cast aspersions on Glasgow, but I mean, I think people in Glasgow are boozed up a lot of the time at certain times no, I'm just saying it is. I will stand over my comment. It's a lively town. Anyone who's
That's
ever
a better way to put it.
Dan's going to be called out in the press conference afterwards.
Anyone who has ever visited Glasgow will know that it's a lively place. I'm staying around centrally, and early evening karaoke bars say a lot about a place, JD.
Maybe they close early, Dan.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, if you're sort of walking down the street at 6-7 in the evening and you hear someone belting out "Tiffany, I think we're alone now" out the window, I mean, I'm just.
Do you start
saying,
dancing? Do you?
I'm not sure it's just because the game is on. That's all I'm saying here. But. No, there is quite a few Irish shirts around. There is a lot of Irish jerseys around the place. There's some suggestion of 2,500 away fans. I think maybe. I kind of wonder, is it one of those games where there'll probably be Irish in Scotland too? It may not necessarily sort of be getting stuff through the main allocation, but even a lot of Scottish jerseys around as well from early today. So I know there was a bit of fears here earlier in the week that the atmosphere around here could be quite subdued today, just because they were in that things were quite toxic for Scotland in June, knocked out of the World Cup, thrashed in Dublin. Things were a bit grim, and they thought they might be reaching one of these cycles with a manager who's been around for a while, where you have that sort of apathy beginning to, I think even the atmosphere in the first half against Ukraine on Wednesday apparently wasn't great, but it seems that really power-packed second half performance has sort of lifted the mood, and you actually sense a real degree of sort of Scottish enthusiasm around the place.
It's funny to see the headline in. I think it's just to follow on from Dan's piece today. Respectful Clark cautious of Irish spirit and warns of set piece threat. I hope we're a bit more nuanced than that nowadays, but there we have it.
I think it was only a one-hit wonder. I think we're all known now. David,
it was John.
Yeah. David Connolly, are you an 80s music man?
I'm not too bad. I mean, that was a good one.
What'd be your karaoke call, David?
What?
What'd be your karaoke if it gun to the head?
Johnny Cash, probably.
Yeah.
A bit of Johnny Cash, yeah, Leroy Brown, something like that. I'm sure I actually sung that on one of my initiations. Well, I had plenty of them. I probably went through the whole album.
The David Connolly album of initiations.
Yeah. Is this Mick McCarthy? Was it, David?
I can't remember. But I mean, just touching on this game, I have to say, I think this is a good Scottish team. I think this is a good Scottish team, so I think this is going to be a really, and as the lads have touched on, obviously they feel they've got something to prove against us. So, and it comes back to being a little bit cyclical, right? Some players in, some players not playing. Look where Gavin is now. I guess compared to, he missed the last couple of windows, but now a Premier League goalkeeper. At such a young age, I think that's brilliant.
He's getting so much experience. I can watch Match of the Day every week, and I know some goals are going in, but just the experience he's having at the moment. Yeah,
exactly. So, although I think that's unfortunately how it is for to be the Ireland manager for the last number of years. It is cyclical like that. Some lads, playing, some lads not playing, some lads at Premier League clubs, some lads not, and that is always going to be the balancing act for Stephen Kenny, which probably at the minute Steve Clarke doesn't have.
And
he's got the majority of his lads playing Premier League football, and for Stephen at the minute, that is the art of managing, picking the right players and balancing lack of form or playing time at club level. And I think it's a very difficult. He's got a really difficult job, but he's managed it okay, I think, over the last couple of seasons. But I can't see it changing anytime soon. So his job is a tough one. I think it is.
Yeah, fine.
My team would be and that's what David is saying there. Like, fair enough, Bazuna, but the outfield players, Collins is playing for Wolves. Apart from that, it's Championship, League One, Championship, not playing, and the two strikers who are both in the Championship, neither of them scoring. That's where we're at. That is where we're at as well. So, you have to be respectful that he doesn't have these massive riches at his disposal at the moment.
53106. Hi lads, I don't rate Ireland because we don't have the quality required. No Premiership players in the team. Scotland have got 4 or 5. As for England, Southgate is overrated based on our easy draws in the World Cup and the Euros, says Sean. I would like to wish the Dogs owners and trainers the best of luck in the final of the Irish Greyhound Derby at Shelbourne Park tonight. My pick is Callowsy Pro-Am, says Niall in Dublin.
Callaway Pro-Am, yeah.
Callaway Pro-Am, okay.
I'll be there later on.
Gone to the Dogs, Johnny.
Gone to the Dogs. Not especially professional that it's clashing with the Ireland game. Some of it, but the Dogs will be very lively tonight. No more than Glasgow. I'm not sure about the karaoke, but
it was one of the great nights, the Irish Greyhound Derby. Is there a consistency squiggle, Dan, about the Ireland team? Do we need to start putting results together? What is a satisfactory return? Is it 4 points from 6 this week over these next 2 games, or are we back into Armenia talk? If you know what I'm saying, if we lose, the way we started that summer was just so dispiriting, and then we kind of picked it up. So it's just getting that layer of consistency. Is that something that we're looking for here?
Yeah, I think 4 points from 6. I think most reasonable people will be very happy with that. Obviously, that wouldn't be enough to finish in the top 2 in the group, and with that will come some natural disappointment, and the reality is that opening result in Yerevan. I mean, both Scotland and Ukraine have won there, so you've lost 3 points on the field there, and that's proved costly. I know didn't happen at home to Ukraine, but I suppose there's a big difference. And you are right, John. It needs to become far more consistent if you're going to qualify. I mean, the draw is the week after next. You're going to be in a group potentially 8 or 10 games condensed into a tight period, and you can't you can't throw one in like another Armenia or another Luxembourg or another Azerbaijan. And this is the thing. To some degree, Ireland have performed reasonably well in games against sort of sides with stronger squads. I mean, Scotland do have a stronger squad. I mean, they have 10 Premier League players in their squad, and a couple of Celtic and Rangers players playing in the Champions League. I mean, it is a stronger squad on paper if you judge where people play their football every week. But Ireland have actually been reasonably okay in a lot of these games, and that's my point. You almost need to see them on Tuesday, efficiently. Take a per side that will come to Dublin and probably try and do the same thing in June. Let Ireland have the ball and see what you can do. And the evolution of the side is about becoming consistent around you need to win those games. Ireland next year, reality, are probably going to be third seeds, and they need to beat all the teams below them, probably home and away, to have a chance of qualifying. So that's why, in some respects, this is a different type of test in isolation. You kind of feel like in this kind of derby encounter, where there's as Johnny sort of alluded to, there's going to be a terrific atmosphere. I'm not too worried about them handling this situation. It's almost, the inconsistency is being able to turn it on when maybe the build-up isn't, when the game itself is an underwhelming one maybe. And that's where you need to become ruthless and efficient and real sort of killers when it comes to just sort of swatting those challenges aside. So, I think when you have a squad that has reasonable amount of young players, that there is going to be an element of inconsistency there, particularly in their early days. And I suppose you listened to Stephen Kenny yesterday. He's trying to speak about those things as though they're in the past tense. We had to suffer, as we made these transitional changes. And I understand that, but I suppose Armenia is still 4 games ago. It's not sort of 7-8 months ago. So until you start to win those type of games routinely, that little doubt sort of lingers in the back of your head.
We've taken the lead in some very, very big away games as well, and if we go into a 1-0 lead tonight, I don't think Kenny was wrong in suggesting the aim should have been to win the group before. I think this is before he knew who was
Probably
in it.
better not to say it though.
But you gotta be positive as well about Ireland. I mean, this is a group that we could conceivably win, and I know if not now. If we'd beaten Armenia, I feel that there have been a lot of strange situations in the group where Ireland would produce a very good performance, everyone would be on a high, and then they'd follow it with just a massive step down, like the Armenia game, like the Azerbaijan game. All these situations, that's the one thing I think, as Dan is alluding to there, you want a consistency in performance. I'd like to see Ireland go out and win the game though. If we go 1-0 up, regardless of whether it's Obafemi or Ogbeni, we've serious pace in attacking areas, and that could stretch Scotland, and I'd like to see us try to win the game and try to finish second in the group, because if we will win on Tuesday. So the prize tonight is to try to win the game and go out with that mindset. I'd be hopeful that's what they do.
5-0 now, Ukraine lead, by the way. Go on,
lads. Just to cut in there. Yeah, I mean, on that, right? In some ways, has Stephen ever sprung a surprise with the starting team? Or is he kind of always? I think the team selection you could kind of guess really. I'd just be interested if he just for this game, for example, I look at the lads that are in form at the top part of the pitch who could do a bit of damage. Say the Armenia game where the ball came up to Michael and he lost possession. Do you remember? And Armenia broke and scored. Now, I think it's too much of a gamble to play him tonight in that. Whereas, but it would be probably the safe thing to do, because.
Do you know in training though, David?
Huh?
Would you know in training, like Dan's on with the 11v11 games, does he have a good feel in training what sort of nick he's in?
Yeah, you would, but I still think there's that little bit of doubt in the back of your mind, in terms of, okay, you might have done your 11v11s, but, there's nothing to replace the responsibility you have when you're starting every week, no matter what football club you're on. The demands on you. He hasn't had those demands this season at club level. Whereas I think it's the safe thing, like we're all saying, they did well at that game. Do you know, I'd like him to see him play Scott Hogan. I know he started against Ukraine, but I would play. The only thing is, I think Scott would be better with the big man. And then you come back to, then does he have to play with Michael Obafemi, for example? Could he play with Chidozie? I don't know. But, that is a lad that is playing week in, week out. He first name on the team sheet. He plays 90 minutes. He's scoring goals. He is quick as they come. He can finish. I'd like him just to maybe spring a surprise and start him. I know he played an hour against Ukraine. Maybe
he said he was off the pace as well. He said that during the week, that he was a yard short and he's not now.
Exactly. And I just think at some point, although it wouldn't be a surprise, I think it would be a surprise. And I'd fancy him to get us a goal in the form that he's in, because, going back to last season, I think Obafemi had something like 12 in his last 16 games, right? And I'd seen him live, and he was ready. He should be playing. He was in great form. I think it's too much of a gamble now. Whereas I think it would be a surprise to play Scott Hogan, but I actually think it would be the right thing to do. But I don't think Stephen would do that, because I think he often maybe plays a bit safe with those lads that have. And sometimes I'd like him to see just spring a bit of a surprise.
We just coming up to the breakdown just before you go, because I know you have to head off. What's your kind of feeling about tonight? What are you expecting?
Well, I do think we'll see Hogan on the pitch at some stage for sure. I think that certainly is one I wouldn't be shocked by. Maybe not starting, but I can see that line of thought completely. What do I expect? I'm not sure. Like, it's sort of, as you mentioned, like Scotland changed their shape the other night. They went with that back four. They were very good against Ukraine, particularly in the second half. Although, I mean, it's a bit like, Ukraine on Wednesday were a bit like Scotland in Dublin to some degree. And sometimes the Scots, when they are confident, is when they are vulnerable. They sort of have this. They have this streak in them. So I don't know. I feel like this is going to be one of these draws tonight that you cover a lot on this beat. I think you'll see a reasonable Irish display. I think there's no real excuse for there not being one, really. As I mentioned, like, the preparation has been pretty smooth. It's been clear.
Dan, do you think Ireland go for broke a bit if it's sort of 1-1 with 10 minutes to go?
Well, like, what is go for broke? Like, what is go for broke? I mean, they don't. like, you know, they haven't thrown Will Keane or some big man into the squad. Like, it's a lot of like for like in forward departments. You know, I know what you're saying. Like, are they going to? I mean, because what I was saying about the Scots, like, if the Scots are 1-1 with 10 minutes to go, they don't want to lose. I mean, the fans will want them to win, the players will want to win, but I wonder what their changes would to be more, you know, more conservative. I think Ireland have to win. Like, you know, Ireland have to believe they'll beat Armenia on Tuesday, who are an average side, and that means the third will be absolutely fine. And you know, as the more points you get on the board, the possible, it helps your sort of ranking and your positioning. But I don't know if they necessarily have this mad going for broke streak, other than sort of, you know, I don't know, bringing Shane Duffy on and sort of sticking him up for sort of long throws and trying to. I know what you're saying, but I don't. Yeah, I like they want to win the game, but I think. I just think it's going to be one of these 1-1 draws. To be honest, I mean, it's always 1-1 draw, isn't it? So why not start the year as you mean to continue?
Enjoy the karaoke, Dan. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm off to sing now, John. See ya.
Dan McDonnell there. Dave Connolly staying with us with Johnny, and Nathan Murphy will be joining us after 4. Some breaking news, folks. The GA League finals will stay for 2023. So the Ord Corla favour the following the meeting of them today, that a Congress will take place on the 18th of February. The return to collective training for inter-county teams the 24th of November this year. The Allianz League finals, as I said, will be retained in football and hurling. The under-20 development leagues will be retained. The Joe McDonnell Cup final will be played on the All-Ireland hurling under-20 final as a double header. So both matches on the same day. And the All-Ireland football final next year, the championship, inter-county championship, will finish on July the 30th, 2023. Shelburne 1-0 up against Bohemians in the Women's FAI Cup semi-final. That is into the closing stages. In the rugby, Ulster beat the Scarlets earlier on today by 55 points to 39, and the Stormers defeated Connacht by 38 points to 15, and it's coming up to full time. It is finished actually now. Ukraine 5, Armenia 0. Plenty more discussion on Ireland against Scotland, on England last night, and on the Premier League with David Connolly, Johnny Ward and Nathan Murphy after 4. And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday, football and off the ball, brought to you by Sky. Get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. You can text us 53106. Listen on News Talk. Also watch us on the Off the Ball digital and social channels on the OTB Sports app, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. We're joined in studio by the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, and on the line by the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly, and our own Nathan Murphy, who joins us from Glasgow, ahead of tonight's Nations League match between the Republic of Ireland and Scotland. Just to bring you up to date, Shelburne into the Evoke.ie Women's FAI Cup final. They've beaten Bohemians by 1-0 with a Noel Murray penalty, and in the Nations League it has ended Ukraine 5, Armenia 0. Afternoon, Nathan.
Afternoon, lads.
So I suppose we all have our kind of vision or thoughts about what we want to see this evening. For me, I want to see a bit of consistency from Ireland. I want to see match-sharp players playing under Stephen Kenny. What's your kind of hope for this evening then, Nathan?
Well, that Ukraine win means that Ireland can't top the group now. So in terms of what it means for the Nations League, it's not quite as important to get all 3 points. I'm with you. I think you want to see Ireland put together a consistent run of results, not just tonight, but actually maybe on home soil for the first time against weaker opposition on Tuesday. Really show against Armenia that Ireland are a team that can dominate possession, that can play in the front foot, and that can score a few goals. Scotland, obviously, it feels are a very different team than they were back in June. I think the news and the speculation that Darragh O'Shea is going to start ahead of Shane Duffy is maybe a response to both Duffy's performance in June, but also to what we saw from Scotland on Wednesday night, and that really high energy, high press, not giving Ukraine a second on the ball, which I really feel probably isn't Shane Duffy's game. So yeah, I think we want to see Ireland put together a run and avoid any calamitous setbacks, because that is what has held this group back so far. If you think to 2 games against Portugal, particularly Portugal away, Serbia away, even Serbia at home, the game against Slovakia, the friendly against Belgium, the home game against Scotland, these are quality opposition. And Ireland have performed really well against them. They played smashing football at times in those games. It is the matches against Luxembourg, against Armenia, against Azerbaijan that have hampered them massively and stalled that momentum. So I think what you want is the second half of that June window, keep it going, create chances, play in the front foot tonight. It's going to be a really, really tough game. I think most Irish fans will probably be satisfied with coming away with a point. But yeah, just kicking on from June.
Have you seen many Irish around, Nathan? You were chatting to Darren O'Dea yesterday, I see.
Yeah, I was out at Hampden Park yesterday. I had arranged to meet up with Darren O'Dea, who's Celtic B team coach. So he was discussing how that's a pretty full-on role right now. So Ange Postecoglou changed the coaching structure. So the former B team coach leaves the club, and Darren O'Dea was put in as one of joint head coaches, and he meets Ange Postecoglou every single day. So they play the exact same system as Celtic's first team play, so that these younger players, it's basically the reserve team, a lot of 19, 20, 21-year-olds, so that when they're ready to step up, they know exactly what Ange Postecoglou wants them to do. It's incredible. Darren O'Dea's only 35 still, and he's in a really good job now at Celtic. It's well worth a listen. His coaching philosophy, the things he's picked up from his travels. Remember, he played in Ukraine, he played in India, he played over in Toronto, and yet another young Irish coach who has big ambitions. It sounded as though working with Ange Postecoglou was absolutely perfect for him, that his philosophy was very much in keeping with that. He pointed out how he played a lot of his international football under Giovanni Trapattoni, and that that he felt wasn't really a style of football that suited him, and certainly not a style of football that he would want to coach. He's going to be at Hampden today. He's actually finishing his pro license today. He had his final round of interviews for it yesterday, and today's the last day. He's been doing it with the Scottish FA. So I suspect we'll hear a lot more from Darren O'Dea over the next couple of years. And there's plenty of Irish fans around, as you would expect. It's a pretty short trip. We're right in the middle of Glasgow here. It's a Saturday afternoon, so it's not over flooded with Irish supporters. The Irish bars are obviously hopping. There was a rousing rendition of Country Roads coming out from the pub.
Were you part of that, Nathan? Were you?
Not. Maybe later, John. Maybe later. Cracking song there,
You can bring the. You got the candlesticks behind you, Nathan. Anybody who's watching in, you can bring the candlesticks down and a cape and stuff.
A beautiful location. So like sell out tonight, Saturday night, Glasgow, Hampden Park. I think the atmosphere will be right up there.
We've got to break away for a second to get an update from Dromoland Castle. Day 3 of the KPMG Women's Irish Open and Aisling O'Reilly.
Yes, it's day 3 of the KPMG Women's Irish Open here at Dromoland Castle. The crowds are out in force today, that is for sure. And after disappointment yesterday for Cavan's Leona Maguire, when she finished the day 10 shots off the lead, she is right back in contention here. She teed off at 9:20 a.m. and finished up about an hour ago. And she had a very impressive day, making 6 birdies and 1 eagle. That leaves her 9 under, just 3 shots off the lead. The wind has picked up here, and it has made it that bit more difficult for those still out on the course. And at the moment, the lead is held by 2 players, Denmark's Smilla Turning-Sunnerbu and Sweden's Moa Folk, all 12 under. In tied second, it's Denmark's Nicole Broch-Esterp and Van Dam, Spain's Carmen Alonso, and they are currently still all out on the course. So lots of excitement still to come here at the KPMG Women's Irish Open.
Yeah, golf and off the ball in association with the KPMG Women's Irish Open. Nathan, if Scotland are going to hurt us, where is it going to be? Is it going to be their midfield dominance? What's your worry if there's a worry for Stephen Kenny?
I think the worry is that John McGinn is able to run the game as he was against Ukraine. He played just off Shea Adams. I know Lyndon Dykes came on and got a couple of goals. The vibes from the Scottish camp seem to be that Dykes will be on the bench again, and he'd go with McGinn just off Shea Adams. He was absolutely everywhere. He ran the show from that number 10 position the last night between himself and Scott McTominay. So it'll be a big test for Ireland in midfield, particularly if Jason Malumbi keeps his place alongside Josh Cullen. I'd expect Jason Knight to have to get in there so they make sure that they have a real midfield 3 for Ireland. And that's the area where Scotland will look to dominate. They've obviously got problems at full back. No Andy Robertson. Nathan Patterson's injured. Kieran Tierney was outstanding. The last night he's probably been better in a Scotland jersey than Andy Robertson has. So look, they've got lots of quality. There's no doubt about that. They probably have players in general playing at a higher level than Ireland. And it feels as though mentality-wise, they're coming into this in a very different place than they were in June. I know they had just beaten Armenia ahead of the June games, but did feel as though they were still devastated from the manner of the World Cup playoff defeat against Ukraine, and they did have chances. Like John McGinn took Gilted's chances very early in that game. He takes them. Maybe we're looking at this very differently. But I think, Ireland in midfield, making sure that they get to grips, who drops deep. Cullen is the one who's quite often at the base of that midfield. I think he'll need Malumbi, who's very energetic generally in his performances, to help him out. I think this is a very even group. It's what the Nations League is meant to be, where you have Scotland beating Ukraine, the Republic of Ireland drawing with Ukraine, Ireland beating Scotland. There's not much between the three of them.
Just in terms of England, David Connolly, last night, what's gone wrong with England? Because if you look at the players they have at their disposal with Gareth Southgate, it just seems that it's all falling apart to a degree, or are we just reading too much into the Nations League ahead of the World Cup?
Well, I mean, certainly the reaction was really, really negative. The lack of goals, I guess, is gone against him as well. I think it's something like, I don't know, nearly 500 minutes. Decision making last night, I watched a little bit. I watched the highlights. Harry Kane just, I don't know, maybe he's on not just a goal bonus, maybe a shooting bonus, because he was just shooting every time he got it. I thought his decision making was a little bit off. We're talking, right, these are the fine margins of getting a result against these teams. I thought he could have put in Phil Foden a couple of times. So I don't know. Look, they had a couple of worrying displays. I thought Kyle Walker was a little bit off it. Declan Rice, maybe because of his how things have gone at West Ham. I thought he was off the pace a little bit as well. Do they need to play with 3 centre backs? I don't know. There's obviously a lot of discussion, I guess, today against an Italy side that is not certainly not one of their greater ones. A lot of lads like Raspadori doing okay at Napoli, but Scamacca's barely sort of figured really for West Ham in and out of the team. I don't think they're anywhere near as strong Italy as they have been in previous years. But I don't know. Yeah, it was strange. Like using talented players like Saka as a wing back didn't really work. So yeah, a lot of things maybe to pour over. I don't think the shape was. I'm not a massive fan of a back three, but a lot of negativity this morning around it.
And Nathan, looking at there's 5 games they played this year and they haven't won any of them. And Harry Maguire's got the vote of confidence from Southgate, and going into a World Cup, it's not really where England want to be.
No, there's a real sense of negativity around them. It does feel much like last year when it worked very successfully to get them to the Euro 2020 final. The Gareth Southgate is more focused on protecting his weaknesses than playing to their strengths. And he clearly feels that defensively he needs that third centre half in there, and also to play Declan Rice in a very defensive role as well. And it means that we're not seeing enough of particularly Phil Foden, it feels like, in those attacking positions. Like, they have any amount of brilliant attacking players. The front three of Foden, Sterling, Harry Kane is right up there amongst the very best, and should score a lot of goals and should create a lot of opportunities. But I think it's behind that the problems start. Like last night, Jude Bellingham couldn't get into the game at all. They didn't seem to know how to use him. Like, Jude Bellingham has been one of the outstanding talents in Europe so far this season. And they don't have a huge amount of options at centre half. So, having to play Kyle Walker in a back three, he has to stick with Harry Maguire at this stage. Is he going to throw a Tomori or a Getty in there in time for the World Cup? It seems very unlikely to be on keep. Very, very unlike Gareth Southgate and everything we've seen from him to take that sort of a risk. Like, Trent Alexander-Arnold probably sums up Gareth Southgate as a manager. I absolutely take that defensively. He can be very poor at times. But can you build a side that protects him the way that Liverpool do? Like, he is such a creative player, but you couldn't see him working in that England system at all because he'd be exposed so often on the right-hand side. And listen, maybe downplaying of expectations might work for England ahead of this. But to go nearly 500 minutes without scoring a goal, it does feel as though maybe 12, 15 months ago was the peak for this side. And even then, that wasn't a very exciting team. Like, it did feel they had played within themselves. They didn't take any risks at all. They've been relegated now, so they're going to be in League B, more than likely with Ireland for the next Nations League. And it does feel as though whatever happens at the World Cup, Southgate will be gone by the end of it.
They're throwing it away, aren't they, Johnny? The players they have.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Southgate message is just gotten. They're not used to it. The players they have, I mean, Christ almighty, like the 2 ex-Irish players, what we would do to have them in our team. And, I guess, I don't know, the Maguire situation that Nathan alludes to there, having to play 3 at the back, is probably an issue. He's looked to me like his confidence is gone. And, Miguel Delaney writing in The Independent today, he's making the point. We're getting close to World Cup here. This isn't like you can't just kind of brush this off anymore and say it's the Nations League. And it looks like there's been a bit of a meltdown in terms of confidence and general belief. And I, for one, welcome this.
Johnny, your gas man. So you'll be going to see Erling Haaland, will you? As a neutral Norwegian fan.
Like, seriously, of all, I mean, do you remember the days where like we used to seem to be playing like the Oman national team?
Oman and Qatar.
And I mean, I have to say I wasn't taking any notice of like who Ireland may or may not be lining up for these friendlies. And then when the Norway thing was announced, I was like, 100% would you actually go to see that game just to watch Erling Haaland? And who did we have on last week talking about his son Stephen Ward, just saying like bringing his son to watch Haaland. I love watching football in the flesh. I still think people who, a few weeks ago we spoke about like the first games I went to in Lansdowne Road, and it was so new to me. But I still think the TV experience doesn't really, like, it doesn't give you enough of a view of what you want to watch in a game. And you can be on Haaland watch for that game if you're so inclined, and also just to see how our greatest prospect, obviously, I think you could say, does against him. If Bazuna isn't our greatest prospect, it's probably Collins, how he does against him. Because I think the league game the other day was a little bit of an abortive mission. But kudos to the FAI. I mean, maybe they didn't have a lot to do, but I think this is a brilliant friendly to get, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him.
You seen him in the flesh yet, David? Erling Haaland?
No, I haven't seen him in the flesh. Let's just hope he's fit, because if he pulls out of an injury, it'd be the biggest sort of anticlimax ever.
You need discounts then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no, I think it's a great game for us. And as you say, if you can get, the likes of because I remember when we were coming into the Ireland team, you'd watch these players on TV or whatever, and then before you know it, as a youngster, you're playing against them. I think for a lot of our lads, probably not many of them are going to come up against Erling Haaland this season. It might just be Gavin and Nathan. That might be it. So, I went to the Brentford Arsenal game, and it is really good to see teams, obviously at the very, very top, how they perform and seeing the difference in quality, and appreciate that, So going to see, the chance to go and Erling Haaland coming to Avivo is great.
So were you on Jesus watch then, were you, David?
Yeah, I was on a little bit of Jesus watch, and just them in general, to have that air of confidence about them. I know we're probably going to get onto the youngest debutant a little bit later, but they had an air of confidence about them, in terms of how they played, and they kind of batted Brentford away pretty ruthlessly and efficiently, and a side that are just playing really, really well. So, often you want to go and see and go, right, how good are they? How good is Jesus? And he was his usual self, but kind of a player that is a centre forward, right? But was never played as a centre forward, or barely ever. Man City. It just shows you, if you like, there could be a side out there, who, the amount of game time he has wasted probably playing wide. And I would go and watch Man City a lot. And they'd play Phil Foden as striker rather than him, or Jack Grealish. I mean, it's quite incredible. But anyway, he's doing very well.
Just on that as well, JD. Like the Sky Sports had their like Premier League memories on during the week, and I stumbled upon was 95, 96, the famous Liverpool Newcastle 4-3, and I was a kid at the time, and nostalgia can completely corrupt your mind, and football was not better back then. It's obviously better now, but when you look at the quest for perfection, the way that Guardiola plays, and the general Man City project. I mean, even this week, they're linked to a bookmaker, and you're like, how is this bookmaker even? They've like 50 followers on Twitter. What do they do? And there's something about the Man City project that I'll never warm to. And football moves on, and it's a beautiful game. Haaland is like something. He's like something from a different era. Just he's so physical.
It's a breath of fresh air.
Breath of fresh air, and also the fact that there's a link to the old Man City through his dad. When like Man City and Main Road, that's what I grew up kind of watching on the box, and I think there was a lot more. That was when football, there was a lot more to it in terms of being a proper working class game. The Premier League was taken off. Now, I don't get any particular joy like watching Man City at the Etihad, just in terms of their supporters and the small.
I bet you if you went to see them in the flesh, you'd have a different view on that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like in terms of they're amazing to watch, but like there's more to football than just
I think it depends on the game.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of City, and I'm going to see Erling Haaland in the flesh next week for the first time. We're commentating on the Manchester derby over there. But last season, I was very lucky. I covered, say, City against United, City against Liverpool, but I was also over at their game against Burnley, and it was, to be quite honest, boring. They won 2-0. Nathan Collins was actually playing centre half for Burnley, and De Bruyne never took a risk for the entire game. Like, all that talent, all that passing ability. So many times you thought, oh, he's just going to try something here, bend one in with the outside of the boot, and just played it safe, and it was pedestrian, and they knew to get the 3 points, and they were happy with that, and they didn't try to push the boundaries or anything. Now, I think against Liverpool and Manchester United, they really stepped it up, and maybe it's too much to expect them to do it every week. But there are a lot of City games where they're so good they can just go through the motions, and it's not the most exciting thing to watch.
And I suppose on Haaland, it's almost like an anachronism now to suggest that, like, with TV and with the media as it is, that you might actually just go to a football game to see an exotic player from a foreign country. This time you actually will.
David, the best player we talk about players and watch them in the flesh or playing with them in the flesh. Was there somebody that really you were going away from a game going, oh my God?
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, Maradona was my hero. I only saw him once. He played in a sort of rest of the world team.
Yeah, Wembley. Yeah, I remember that.
At Wembley, yeah. So he was sort of the one. He was the one player I wanted to sort of that I looked up to. So, but in terms of when you start playing against these really good players, I mean, the one memory sticks out is facing the Arsenal side in about, I don't know, 97, 98, and in the tunnel, and they were just like twice the size of me, and I looked at them, I thought, well, that's what a Premier League player looks like, and I was anything but that at the time. I mean, they were a team of absolute giants. I think Petit, Vieira, Henry, maybe Henry wasn't, I can't remember the whole team, Adams, they were just and you just thought, wow, this is the level, this is the physicality, the athleticism, and that was probably the one time it struck me that, okay, maybe you could, that's the sort of specimen that you're up against. Now things have changed, right? Because that wasn't the case, but I think at that time it was looked upon as, wow, that was the physical and technical yardstick. They were all 6 foot plus giants.
Nathan, so when you've gone to games, would there be a player that you've seen that would be, wow, you folks, the television doesn't do this player justice?
Of the current crop, I think Phil Foden is the one. I'm not sure there's still a full appreciation of just how good he is, and his ability to take the ball down on the inside of his foot when it's coming across at 50, 60 yards and then be already mid the next movement already. I think Salah's underestimated. I think if you're watching him in the flesh, you see the intricacy of his touches, how he's quite often been double, triple marked, and he can still generally make an impact on the game. Like the two, if I look back in sort of the last decade of covering games week in, week out, that I always look forward to seeing were Aguero and Suarez. And without going down the route of stereotypes, like they both just had that South American niggle constantly. Like they were always biting at literally in Suarez's case. They were all you just knew they were giving 100% every single game. They wanted to score as many goals as they possibly could. They never stopped. They could score absolute worldies. They could score tap-ins. They could do it all. So, Aguero, I think, is a huge loss to the Premier League. But obviously, I think Haaland is probably even a step up in that.
Yeah, 5-3-1-6. I think the reaction to Haaland's been a bit over the top. Lewandowski scored 11 in 8 games this season, has a much better all-round game. If he was playing for Man City, he would have scored more goals. But he's not playing in the best league, though, is he?
Can you imagine as well, just quickly on, if Haaland was playing in the 90s, every ball would be going in the box from the goalkeeper on his head. He'd be, smashing players all over the place. And he's barely had to out-muscle people, really. He's barely, but, City keep the ball on the floor an awful lot. Like that Brentford game, Ivan Toney is almost unplayable in the air, but Brentford just at times just refuse to put it in the air because they want to play the possession game. And same with Man City. It's just, it's interesting. Maybe if Haaland was playing in the 90s, I think he'd be utilised a lot more, with his aerial ability than he is for Man City, and being a little bit more direct.
I think the great thing with Haaland is he takes defenders, they always have to watch him now and they're always scared. So he takes and he creates more space for the other players in the Manchester City attack.
It's just that athleticism. Like, I mean, you see a lot of players in the League of Ireland that are really good technically, but they're not at the next level because they're just not quick enough. They're not fast enough off the blocks, and he's, as you say, Jetty, he, as a defender, I honestly wouldn't know. I don't know what you can do. I think you can have a 9 out of 10 performance and he can score twice because of his ability to do things out of nothing, and that pace, that quick pace, that quick like 5-yard pace, and his strength as well. And he just seems to have a humility about him that he really shouldn't have. I mean, he's been
boyish enthusiasm, I would call it.
Yeah, I spoke about it last week, and again, you're probably making too much of it. But that lovely moment of him like placing the jersey to the kit man when everyone just flung it at him, and the kit man kind of reciprocating by tapping him on the back. It was, I mean, you can read a lot into social media clips, but there seems to be humility about him, and he loves playing football, and whatever about Roy Keane and his dad, whatever about their life together and the moments that they have, which are fascinating. He seems to be brought up to be a very, very good kid.
I don't think there was much of a life that they had. Jack Grealish, David, where do you stand on him? Does he get too much criticism? Is he just entitled to it? Is it the 100 million player thing the issue with him? Because obviously he had a bit of a funny exchange with Graham Souness this week.
Yes, I mean, Jack, I think, look, I've seen Jack, live a few times, right, working, and whenever I watch him, although it's happened less this season, you never get the feeling that he's going to see out a game, right? He always looks like he's a mistake or two, a misplaced touch or whatever, away from being taken off. That's how it was last season. He has finished more games this season from what I've seen. But, I mean, he has also said that Pep has told him he's got to stay on the ball a little more, which is interesting because, the amount of players that end up at a City or United and it doesn't work out, and it's because they change the way they play or they lose their confidence or they don't stay on the ball as long. So that was quite interesting in terms of, can he have more of an impact on the game by staying on the ball more and having more end product? Does he need to do something else rather than obviously cutting in field as he likes to do? I couldn't understand him last season when he joined. I mean, Pep played him as a striker a couple of times, which I just couldn't understand. And every time he dragged him off. He didn't start him as a striker and went, right, it's not working out, say against Watford or against Brentford, but I'll move you wide left. He ended up taking him off. And sometimes I sort of blame the manager for Jack's slow start, because I just think it's one thing if you can't get into the team out wide in a position you bought him for. If you don't have a striker, starting him through the middle was never really going to work. But then keep him on the pitch, but move him over to his strongest position, because I think there is a top player in there. But I kind of half blame the manager a little bit. I don't think he really managed him that well in terms of his game time and also his confidence a little bit. And there's no doubt you can be cost 100 million or 1 million. Like Jack obviously suffers like a lot of other players if maybe his game's just a little bit, off the level. But he's a top player, but I don't think his manager helped him when he signed. That's what I think.
Is he going to end up in cheers or tears, Nathan, you think, with Grealish at City?
Oh, it feels like it might just fade out, and whether it's next summer or the summer after, he'll find himself maybe doing a Raheem Sterling and going to another top club. I sort of feel with Grealish that like Phil Foden contradicts everything that's said about Grealish and the way he plays, because when Foden gets the ball, he doesn't do what Grealish does, and it's generally one or the other out on that left-hand side. Like Foden gets it. He is direct. He is going to take on the fullback. He's going to cut inside, and his intention is to create a goal or to score a goal. It feels every time he gets on it. Whereas Grealish just seems, whether it's just shy in confidence or just in a position he's not comfortable in, it looks as though he's taken the safe option all the time. And he is 27. It does feel like we talk about Jack Grealish like he's 22 or 23 and give him time and he'll develop and all of that. Like this is it. He's 27. This should be the absolute peak time of his career. And, what David says, he's a top player. He is playing in a team of greats. He's going up against maybe the best English talent of the generation in Phil Foden for the same spot. Erling Haaland already looks like an all-time great. Kevin De Bruyne is one of the best players ever to play in the Premier League. Even the other side, Riyad Mahrez is a former footballer of the year. Some would say Bernardo Silva is better than a lot of them. So that's the caliber of player. And at City, you can't just do it the odd time. You have to do it all the time. And the fact that he's not as important to City as he was at Aston Villa is maybe taking a bit of getting used to. I'd imagine his touches per game are, probably way down. Certainly his effective touches, where even when he played out on that left-hand side for Villa, where maybe he was at his best, like he could control the game from out there. Whereas now he's sort of a bit part, doesn't get it as often, and has to try and create something. And he doesn't. I don't know if there's an issue with his lifestyle. He obviously both Graham Souness and Roy Keane sort of give they'd like a night out with him kind of thing. He does seem like a very good lad. But it does feel it's sort of now or never for him if he's to properly seal a place. Because for that Manchester derby next week, if everybody's fit, is he in that team? I don't think he is.
No, he's not. He's not in the team. That's the proof in the pudding, isn't it? Really, Nathan.
It is, and Foden is the one. I have to say, Foden for all the big games is who he'll go to because he delivers. Like his best performances generally over the last couple of years have been in the matches against Liverpool, which is as good a caliber of match as you could see anywhere in Europe. I think that's where Foden is different. So like this thing of they play in the same position, but he's telling Foden to do one thing and Grealish to do another thing. Maybe there's different types of games where he wants Grealish to do something else. But maybe it is just that little step too far from him. And I've seen the point raised that he cost 50 million. Maybe it's a different conversation. It's 100 million. It's a huge price tag. You expect them to be at Foden's level, even I think Mahrez's level, which I'm not sure he is right now.
Okay, we got to take a break. Sam Verdon has scored for Longford 1-0 against Treaty United in Division 1 of the League of Ireland. Finn Harps 0, Bohemians 0 after half an hour. Shelburne into the Women's Cup final. They beat Bohemians by 1-0 in the rugby. Ulster won 55-39 away to the Scarlets. The DHL Stormers beat Connacht by 38 points to 15. And Armenia 0, Ukraine 5 was a result from earlier on. 53106 for your text messages with Johnny Ward here in studio. Nathan Murphy in Glasgow ahead of the Republic of Ireland, Scotland, and the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly on the line. We're back after this. And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5. This is Football Saturday with Nathan Murphy in Glasgow, Johnny Ward in studio, and the former Republic of Ireland striker David Connolly on the line as well. You can listen on News Talk and also watch us on the digital and social channels for Off the Ball on the OTB Sports app, YouTube, Facebook and on Twitter. Shamrock Rovers, Johnny, are they looking over their shoulder with worry now with Derry City in the title race, in your view?
I think they are. It's a 2-point gap with a game in hand, and Derry have to go to Tala. If Derry City were playing Shamrock Rovers tomorrow, I'd be interested to see what Nathan thinks of this. If Derry were playing Shamrock Rovers tomorrow anywhere, I very much fancy them to win, and that's on the basis of last Sunday when Rovers had the excuse last Sunday that they'd been to Belgium and they were coming off that Thursday night game, which was a bit disappointing, and they had to go to Brandywell, even though I think they were back in the country. They got a flight home Thursday, so they went to Brandywell on Sunday. They were so inferior to Derry. And through a bit of grit, they got it to extra time, knocked out of the Cup for 2 years in a row, having lost the final the year before. So that was kind of like, okay, now we focus on Europe and the league. I went to Talca on Thursday night, JD, and it's not a must-win game for Rovers, and Shells are kind of going along okay, nothing to play for. Rovers were so poor, so poor. It was honestly one of the worst games I've seen in years at any level. There was very little quality in the game. I've never seen Jack Byrne give the ball away so much, and I mean never seen remotely. Sometimes under pressure, sometimes not under pressure. The first shot of note in the game was after about 75 minutes. Dan Cleary off the crossbar from 35 yards. There was no quality in the game. Otherwise, it was flat. And Derry City have an out now. I think if they win all their games, they have a really big chance to win the league. That's asking a lot, but there's something about that, like that week for Shamrock Rovers where they lost in Ghent, gave away bad goals. You could exonerate them to an extent. Derry, you could kind of exonerate them Thursday night. It was like, well, there's something not quite right here. They were really, really, really off it. And Stephen Bradley has, I don't know if the players are tired. They have a big squad. They can bring in changes, but they're marquee players. Farrugia, who's been brilliant, he was taken off at half-time the other night. Graham Burke, I think, was taken off after getting booked. Ended up having a verbals with Joey O'Brien after getting booked. And, Damien Duff spoke about it being like a good point. It was a terrible game of football. Anyone who went to that and it was their first League of Ireland game wouldn't be going back. And I do wonder with Rovers, I really do. And they've a lot of big games ahead. I think they're playing UCD Monday. Wouldn't be banging on the beating anyone at the moment. Maybe I'm overreacting.
Nathan, is this the result of a long European run?
I think it probably is. And one thing you would say in Rovers future is that they've 4 of the remaining 7 games, I think it is, are at home, and they've been pretty much unstoppable at Tala all season. And last time, against Finn Harps, they took them apart. You wouldn't be surprised if they did the same against UCD on Monday night. It's interesting with the return of Jack Byrne. He's clearly the most technically gifted player in the league. But at the start of the European campaign, they changed things slightly and they started going a bit more direct. They were going with Rory Gaffney and Aaron Green up front, and it certainly suited European football. It meant actually there was a bit of momentum to what they did, because they can be sort of Manchester City-esque at times, that it's possession almost for possession's sake, and they totally dominate the ball, and they're very patient, and they know that the quality that they create some chances where there was a lot more pace and energy when they were going with the 2 of them. And obviously Jack has come back, and there's been an awful lot of rotation, and it does feel as though it's starting to fall a little bit flat. Obviously there's a big energy boost of qualifying for the Conference League, but then they haven't kicked on in the Conference League, and now they've got these endless run of games. And like against Derry, they just looked totally.
Did you watch that game, Nathan?
I did, yeah. It felt like it was. Look, it's very hard to watch a game up in Derry. Like the pitch is a joke. That they're still allowed to use basically a plastic pitch, not a plastic pitch, but that they're doesn't make for a good viewing experience at all. But it did look shattered, and understandably so. They just played a huge European game. These are some of the biggest games of their career. 3 days in advance, but they're sort of going 2 games every week. And like, if you're Derry, you're thinking it's the penultimate game of the season, as far as I'm aware. That game in Tala between Rovers and Derry. At the time, I'd imagine Rovers probably a month ago would have thought that that's the night they'll pick up the league trophy. Right now, if you're Derry, you're thinking let's keep it within 2 points, and we're the team with all the momentum.
So call it. Who's going to win the league?
It should be Shamrock Rovers. The game Nathan refers to, I think it'll still be alive at that stage, at the very least. And whatever about this season, I was speaking to Rory Higgins during the week. I said, I was making the point, you've had a very good season. You're going to likely get to an FAI Cup final. And whatever happens, it'll be a good season. But there was something about Rovers on Thursday night that for me would definitely make me not be counting my chickens. And I do just wonder. Obviously, Shamrock Rovers should win the league, but it's not done.
David, the Premier League, we're kind of obviously on the break at the moment, and a bit of time to think about what we've seen the last few weeks since the start of the season. Who've been the winners, losers for you? Pleasant surprises, disappointments? What's your kind of take so far on what you've seen?
Yeah, I get. If you take away the
City thing,
the City thing, yeah, and you delve a little bit deeper as well. I mean, I think one of the surprises has got to be Fulham. I mean, it has to be, because I know it's not great for Duffy, but he went there because they only had 2 fit centre halves, and at the start of the season, the manager was moaning like mad as if it was going to be a disaster. And obviously, pretty pleased for Alexander Mitrovic, because a striker who's basically binned under Scott Parker, re-energised and has just sort of got off where he left off in the Championship. So great for him, and I think that's been a real surprise, I guess, because I don't think many people saw Fulham maybe starting the way they have. I think everyone would have thought they'd have struggled maybe a little bit like they did previously. So I think for Fulham that's been a real positive. There's been a few others, obviously we know about Brighton's form, whether that will continue, but nonetheless, all the money they banked and still to be doing well at the top of the league. But for me, one of the real surprises has been Fulham.
Who finishes second, David?
Tottenham.
I don't. That's a tough one. I don't know. I still think Liverpool. I think they'll come good. I do. I think they'll come good, Liverpool. I think Tottenham have done well. Don't get me wrong, but and look, they're saying all the right things. They're saying everything that we all kind of knew about Antonio Conte, right? And I knew some of the staff when he was at Chelsea, and in fact, a physio I know worked with Antonio at all his other clubs, and he said, "Wow, wait till these Chelsea players get Antonio. They won't know what has hit them." They were training 3 times a day. They were doing 2 video meetings a day. They had never worked as hard. The national team, he would run them into the ground. We saw them getting sick pre-season. Remember there was those images?
Yeah, Troy Parrott was the only one that wasn't. He was the best.
yeah.
Got to have a shelf life, David, doesn't it?
Well, but you got to be a hungry team, and Spurs are a hungry team. Look at Matt Doherty this week at the press conference. He looks absolutely like I've never seen anybody look as fit.
Yeah, exactly. Like dogs, like butcher's dogs. And, you know, I have seen them and be okay. Like I saw them against Brighton and they were okay. You know, they didn't really do much. Like under Antonio Conte, they were all right, but their top part of the pitch is really talented, which certainly, you know, now Son is back scoring goals, who's everyone's favourite, you know, then, like, you never know. But I still think there's a doubt about them whether they can last the pace.
There is a doubt. I think what he needs to do is actually play three in the midfield.
That's an issue for them, isn't it? They can't necessarily get a lot of control in games.
Yeah, I think they've been going too much in the flanks. I think three in the midfield and actually just play two up top. But I'll be of the view myself that I think Liverpool are wrecked. I think Arsenal actually exceeded expectations. I'm interested to see when Arsenal going to Arsenal. They might not. They might be actually all right. Obviously, City are going to win the league, and Haaland is absolutely sensational. I think Leeds are probably better than or worse than their position suggests. I think Palace are better than their position suggests. Don't know about you, Nathan, what your 7 or 8 week takeaways have been.
I think Arsenal have been exceptional, and look, obviously Mikel Arteta will get a lot of credit on the coaching side. I just think it re-emphasised that, you know, signing good players is such a key part of football, and been able to get Zinchenko and Jesus. I know Zinchenko hasn't played every game, but even it seems his leadership and the games he's played, he's been brilliant. They obviously brought in Martin Odegaard last summer. He's gone to another level, and Jesus just seems to have transformed things. Like, he's taken on a real leadership role and just a totally different character from what we've seen. And with Will Arsenal, like, they got a lot of stick after the United game. I thought it was over the top. They were very, very good for 65 minutes. Yeah, they gave up a couple of cheap goals. Like, the top four is so difficult to call. Like, Tottenham has been brilliant at times, but it wasn't the 3 games last season, John, at one stage they went without even having a shot on target. And, you know, David mentioned a couple of those matches. It does feel they still have that game in them every so often where they create nothing, where they can't get Kane or Son or Richarlison involved in it. For Liverpool, the next couple of weeks are probably going to decide everything for them. Like, they got Manchester City coming to Anfield about 2 weeks after the restart. So they need to be fully motoring by then. And I don't even know if it's that direct. For me, it feels Liverpool went through a sort of almost silent shift in philosophy when they signed Thiago, that the rock and roll football, they decided to go for a bit more control. And like, Thiago is as good as anybody in the world in giving a team control. But it meant actually that they were reliant on one player, whereas actually that midfield of Fabinho, Henderson and Wijnaldum, the energy that they brought, if one of them missed, somebody else could stick in, and as long as they had the energy, they could almost do the job, because it was all about turnovers. Whereas now they've an awful lot more of the ball in midfield than 3-4 years ago, and at its best, they probably had Liverpool at their best under Jurgen Klopp. But if Thiago's not there, they've nobody who can control a game like him, and it does feel as though it all falls apart a little bit. So I'm not convinced that Liverpool will turn it around to the extent that they can challenge Manchester City. I think they'll be still there in the mix, but like, this is going to be the most fascinating season, because, you know, 2 of Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal, City, United are going to miss out on the Champions League. And even for United, you know, I think that's probably going to be seen as some sort of failure this season. So we're into 6 weeks before the World Cup. There's probably 12 games for most of those teams. So we'll have a new crisis every 3 days.
South Africa, by the way, leading Argentina 12-0 in the United Rugby Championship. He can coach Erik ten Hag, and it seems like it's working, Nathan, very early, just early doors. But it does seem that it's becoming a bit more stable there now.
Yeah, it's getting better. It could only get better, it feels, after those first couple of matches. Again, they have a system that seems to work for the players that they have at their disposal. The signings that they've made have been good signings by and large. Malacia looks a player at left back, and Christian Eriksen, he played the false 9 that first day. Obviously, it wasn't ideal. Now he's playing a bit of deeper role. They've got an awful lot of control in midfield as well, and his link up with Bruno Fernandes is going to be important. He feels like he's sorted out the Ronaldo issue, and Ronaldo, we haven't heard too much bitching and moaning out of him so far. But yeah, I think United are getting better. Like, they have an awful lot of talented players. They're always, if they had a bit of organisation, going to be good enough to win a lot of games. I think he probably still has a little bit to go, though, before they're fully through the crisis period that they're in.
Yeah, David, who do you see as the top 4? Is it Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs and City?
Look, I just wonder about Arsenal, because I mentioned I saw them against Brentford, but you go back to the United game, I just wonder how they'll go against sides that do really go toe-to-toe with them. I got a feeling that they might be caught in the top 4. I think Arsenal. and I know maybe Liverpool might be done, but let me tell you, Liverpool and Chelsea, they are going to, I'd put my bottom dollar that those two do finish in the top 4.
Okay, so Nathan, what are you hoping for? Sorry, David. Nathan, what are you hoping for tonight? What are you predicting? Dan was a 1-1 draw.
I think Dan has predicted a 1-1 draw for every Ireland game for the last 10 years, and I'm probably not far behind them. Look, I think Stephen Kenny made a good point yesterday of this bit of new Ireland. We've discussed this team and squad in depth so much over the last couple of years. It feels as though they're maybe more mature than they are. Like when the team's out in an hour, there's a good chance 7 of the players will be 23 and under. So it's still a very inexperienced team. And you want them to go out on big occasions like this, away from home, and express themselves. As I said, they've done it in Serbia, they've done it in Portugal. And I think tonight they'll go and do it again. And a 1-1 draw, we would take it.
David, call it briefly.
Briefly, I would say briefly, they will sneak this 1-0.
Oh, okay. And the goal scorer?
Hogan off the bench.
The last prediction, David, I heard David give here was that Haaland was an absolute certainty to finish top scorer when he was an 11-4 shot.
And what's your prediction this evening, John?
2-0 Ireland.
2-0 Ireland. David and Nathan, thanks so much. Nathan, enjoy the celebrations after the game.
Cheers, John.
Or David Connolly there and Nathan Murphy. Johnny, thank you so much.
Thanks, JD. Enjoy the evening.
Enjoy the night.
Saturday night football. It's great to have international Ireland v Scotland. A lot of fun to be had.
Well, absolutely. Before we go, time to get a final update from Dromoland Castle with the latest from round 3 of the Women's Irish Open. Aisling O'Reilly.
Yes, it was a brilliant day 3, the KPMG Women's Irish Open here at Dromoland Castle. The wind did pick up here later in the day, which made it difficult on the players still out on the course. And at the moment, the lead is held by yesterday's leader, Sweden's Moa Folk, and also Anne van Dam of the Netherlands, both on 11 under par. In tied third is Sweden's Jessica Karlsson, England's Annabelle Dimmock, Denmark's Nicole Broch Esterp, Spain's Carmen Alonso, and Finland's Ursula Wickstrom, 10 under par, just 1 shot off the lead. And after a disappointing round 2 yesterday for Cavan's Leona Maguire, when she finished the day 10 shots off the lead, she is right back in contention here. She teed off at 9:20 a.m. She had a very impressive day, making 6 birdies and 1 eagle. That leaves her 9 under par, just 2 shots off the lead, leaving her in a great place heading into the final day here at the KPMG Women's Irish Open.
Okay, thanks Aisling. Latest scores: Premier Division of the League of Ireland, Finn Harps 0, Bohemians 0, and in Division 1, Longford 1, Treaty United 1. That's it for today. Don't forget Off the Ball back tomorrow 1 to 7 here on News Talk. Joe Malloy in the chair. Going to be a great Sunday paper review with Vincent Hogan and Jerry Thornley in the studio. Shane Keegan and Dion Fanning will review tonight's Nations League match between the Republic of Ireland and Scotland in Glasgow in the football hour. Niall O'Toole will join us again from the World Rowing Championships. Remember, gold today for Paula Donovan and Fintan McCarthy. We'll also bring you the best bits, folks, from Golf Weekly, and we'll play out the Brendan O'Duffy interview from OTB AM earlier this week. A must listen. Be sure to join us tomorrow if you missed any of the Saturday panel on Ireland and Australian rules with Cora Staunton, Mickey Quinn and Kieran Byrne, or any of OTB Football Saturday with Nathan, Dan McDonnell, Johnny Ward and David Connolly. You can find the podcast of our content on the OTB Sports app or wherever you get your pods. Thanks so much for listening to us on your radio across the country here on News Talk Today. We'll speak tomorrow at 1. Bye-bye.